Well, hello everyone, and good evening. Welcome, welcome, welcome to Market Hall and the 11th 3-minute Thesis 3MT competition. Let's hear it. Woo, yeah! The 11th. For those of you who know me, I'm sorry. But for the rest of you, I'm Dr. Michael Eamon. I'm the principal of Catherine Parr Trail College. We have 50% of our college population are grad students, and we've been proud supporters of 3MT almost from the very beginning, and we work very closely with the gang and academic skills. Let's put your hands together for academic skills in Trent University. To put on this spectacular event year after year after year. We've actually been doing this for almost over 13 years, but there was this little thing called COVID that got in the middle, and we couldn't do the competition, so we took a 2-year hiatus. So this is our 11th time at Market Hall and our 11th time at 3MT, and it's going to be a really great evening today. So if we go to the next slide, I just want to say thank you for being here. It is so wonderful, and some of you may be asking yourself, okay, Trent University I get, but what's this Trail College deal? Well, Trent is what they call a collegiate university. That means it's made up of a bunch of composite university colleges, and each college is a little community of scholars, a community that supports each other, a community that helps you to thrive and survive in the mean old world. And we put on 3MT with grad studies, with academic skills, with so many people as a way to enjoy the academic pathway, but also to give you skills, communication skills that you can use in the future. I'm grateful to be here with you tonight, and I'm also grateful that we're on the treaty and traditional territory of the Mississauga-Anishinaabe. And so for time out of memory, the Anishinaabe inhabited this space. And before the Williams treaties, before Treaty 20, before the settlers even came into the region, they're the Anishinaabe. And the Anishinaabe are people of the land. But they're also people of the water. And water was the key means of communication and transportation. And I think, there was this great portage that went all the way from Mud Lake or Shamong Lake, all the way down pretty close to where we are now in Market Hall, and shot off into Little Lake. And so for time out of memory, the Anishinaabe and their ancestors traversed this portage between the waters. And when you walk, you talk. And when you talk, you communicate, you air sometimes grievances or beefs. Sometimes you come to an understanding that you didn't have before. So I think there's no greater way to acknowledge, appreciate, and embrace the traditional knowledge of the Anishinaabe than to maintain this space as a space of communication, of understanding, of coming together. And so if we just want to go to the next slide, when you Google grad student life, this comes up, all these images, right? And a lot of them, you can see a sense that there's a lot of hair pulling happening in it. There's a lot of people banging their heads against desks. There are some grad students in the audience here. Does this accurately depict your life? Yeah, I see heads shaking up and down, and a lot of people with, clumps of hair. They're saying, yes, it does. It does represent my life. It's tough to be a grad student. If you haven't been a grad student, you should try it. And if you are a grad student, it will be over soon. So don't worry. But being a grad student is both the most wonderful time in your life because you get to actually dig down into something you really enjoy, and one of the most stressful times in your life. And so what do you do when it's end of term and you're really stressed out? Well, let's get into a competition where I have only 180 seconds to state my thesis or they kick me off the stage. Yes, so I want you all in the audience to put your hands together for the brave, wonderful grad students who are doing this tonight. Another slide. And here's a picture of, it looks like a big chess piece, but it's supposed to be the ivory tower. And the importance of communication is that more than ever, we live in a world where I don't have to tell you about it. It's nasty out there. People are saying uninformed, horrible things. They think doing your research is watching a TikTok video, and really doing your research is watching 2 YouTube videos, right? We're in a time where communication's at an all-time low, and people create echo chambers, and so they don't want to hear new ideas. They just want to be validated in their own thoughts and not be challenged. And so some people call the university the ivory tower, this space where there's no connection to the quote-unquote real world. Hogwash. We are all in the real world, whether you're a grad student or not, and I think 3MT is especially important and salient because it helps break down those barriers. And I think all grad students want to communicate their work, and they need to communicate their work more than ever in this time. And so this is why this event is so very special, and why I said to them all, you're all winners tonight, and they're like, whatever, that's what they say. But you are all winners, because anyone who has the humility to say, I'm going to put my, dignity on the line, I'm going to, be a bit embarrassed, I'm going to get up in front of people for the hope that they can learn something more. And that's the great thing about Trent University. Our motto is Nunc cognosco ex parte, now I know in part. Right in the motto of this university, it says, there is more to learn, please let me know more. Because when we know more, we become better people, right? We're all, no matter how diverse you are and all the different types of backgrounds you come from and the different disciplines you're in, we're all here because we believe education makes us better people. And when we become educated, then we can go on and make the lives of others better too. And I think there's no better goal for that. So thank you. Let's put our hands once together for these grad students who are going to make our lives better. All right, this is a competition that started in the University of Queensland way back in 2008. Trent was an early adopter. We started around 2013. There are rules. There are things that I have to say, like I have to actually tell you the rules. I have to introduce the judges, which I like to do. Anyways, there's lots of things we have to do, and so I'm going to get right to the paperwork of it all today. So, how do the rules work? There is one PowerPoint slide permitted, no animations or special effects for you guys, but I can use all the ones that I need to use. There's no additional electronic media permitted in this competition, no additional props. Presentations are limited to 3 minutes and 3 minutes only, and this is really the part I really don't like. There's a timer here, and this is terrifying. It says 3 minutes. You can't see it, audience, but I can. And it says 3 minutes, and it counts down. And as soon as it goes 0, if the person on stage says one word, they're disqualified after that. I know. So, and that bell gets rung. Is that for me? Or is that for, okay. I'm gonna move this fact quickly, but you all know what is gonna happen. So, no pressure, but there's a little pressure. No notes are permitted either. And the presentations are to be spoken word. We have a lot of great singers in the audience, and in the competing today, we have a lot of people who could rap or do other things, tap dance. Only spoken word is permitted. Here's the judging criteria. It's not huge, but there are 3 key things, and please pay attention because there is an Audience Choice Award. So maybe you can use this criteria as you choose who you think is the best speaker tonight. Was the thesis topic and its significance communicated in a language appropriate to an intelligent but non-specialist audience? This is the key to good arts and science communication. We don't want to have big words. We want to and confuse people. We want to engage people. And did the speaker do that properly? Comprehension, did the presentation help the audience understand the research? After those 3 minutes, did you come to an understanding what was presented, or are you more confused? Ask yourself that question. And engagement, did the oration make the audience want to know more? And that is the true mark of knowledge. People used to say, like, aliens created the pyramids and all sorts of crazy kind of pseudoscientific things. And why they say those things is because it's a simple answer all tied up in a knot. How did they make the pyramids? They're so complex. Aliens. And there you go. You don't have to question it anymore. But real engagement with knowledge makes people leave asking more questions than they came in with. Really? How does that happen? How does it work in this way? Does it work change? That is what real scholarship's about. And that is what we're evaluating our speakers on tonight. We have prizes, so why would we force you to do this? For money, of course. And so our prizes are, number 1, the School of Graduate Studies Grand Prize, and we have the Dean of the School of, yes, that's right, this is some high rollers here tonight. We have the Dean of the School of Graduate Studies here, and he'll be giving out the grand prize, which is $500 and an all-expense-paid trip to the finals. That's right, this is a worldwide competition, so we have here, and then we go off to provincials, and so you get the $500 and a trip to provincials, which are in beautiful St. Catharines, Ontario. Yeah, let's hear it for St. Catharines. Number 2 is the Catherine Parr Trail College Second Place Award, $500. Number 3 is the Trent Graduate Student Association TGSA Third Place Prize, $500. And The Office of Research and Innovation Audience Choice Award. This is the one that you will vote for, $500. So thank you to all of our sponsors. Okay. Yes, you can clap. And now it is my honor to introduce our judges. Because this is a competition that brings the community and the university together, we make sure that we have great community members as part of our judging. And so our first judge is David Goyette. He is a true Renaissance man. He's an author, he's a poet, he's a painter, he's a musician. He is also an honorary fellow of Trail College. We are so happy that you are. And he is also an inductee to the Pathway of Fame. He truly is a civic-minded person and a civic builder. And let's put your hands together for David Goyette. Then we have Leslie Highway. She is the president and CEO of the Peterborough Regional Health Center Foundation. She's a fellow of the Association of Healthcare Philanthropy, AHP. And if she probably doesn't want me to say this, but not everybody gets to be a fellow of this. I think only 2%. There's something, you're a 2%er. So that's pretty amazing that Leslie has that. Vice chair of the Canada Council Association for Healthcare and Philanthropy. Business Citizen of the Year. Just won that in 2025 from the Peterborough and Kawartha Chamber of Commerce. Everybody say, put your hands together for Leslie Highway. Giniraj JJ Thivasgayam, close, I'm sorry, I always screw it up, I'm sorry, JJ, is the executive director of the New Canadian Centre in Peterborough. He has a background in urban planning, he's a really cool guy. His urban planning background, he has a background in management, regional planning, he's a strategic leader. He worked with the city of Peterborough, and now he is the director of the New Canadian Centre. A great guy, great supporter of not only New Canadians, but of all sorts of civic activities. Put your hands together for JJ. And now we're going to have the first presenter come up. Now we're going to get right into it. Yep. There's going to be, let me tell you how this works. So again, there are rules that we have to abide by. They're international rules. The first speaker will come up. We'll give them their 3 minutes. They'll talk. Unfortunately, they can't leave the stage until the judges have finished judging. And so when we first started this was kind of awkward because I would stand here and they would stand here and we'd look at each other and we'd just be in quiet, and it really got awkward real fast. So what we've done in subsequent years is that every contestant is asked to have questions that they don't mind me asking them in that awkward silence about themselves, about the research, about things they like to do. And so that's what we're going to do. The first presenter will present. We will ask some questions and have a little chit-chat so you get to know them a bit more about who's in front of you. And then we have the next presenter. So, are we all ready? Okay. So our first presenter today is Beth Jacobs in Indigenous Studies with Safeguarding Our Memories, Healing Dissociation in Indigenous Communities. Beth.
As an Anishinaabe Two-Spirit survivor, advocate, researcher, and therapist, my helping, healing, and research worlds converge together in supporting survivors of trauma. Dissociation, an often taboo and complex topic in the mental health world, is at its core, just like the picture shows, a separation of mind, emotions, spirit, body, personhood, identity, and autonomy. An experience which exists because of intense trauma, usually that happens in childhood. My research focuses on Indigenous experiences of dissociation and how our communities converge together to center culture and kinship and healing, wellness, and wholeness. Who here has known somebody who has experienced trauma in their life? It is likely that you or somebody that you know have experienced dissociation. Have you ever felt foggy in your mind? Have you ever felt like you were disconnected from your story, or that you don't remember everything that you've been through? In honoring and centering my communities and our teachings, I work to redefine dissociation through anti-colonial, anti-oppressive, and cultural lens. In doing this, I have researched hundreds of Indigenous mental health supports, and I acknowledge that they all center cultural knowing, being, and doing in their processes. And I need to honor this work that our communities have done. When I center Indigenous resurgence, and resistance as healing medicine in our communities, I'm doing that, and I'm also recognizing that those processes are how we connect with our parts that we have lost or that have been harmed during trauma. I work to redefine dissociation through anti-colonial, anti-oppressive, and cultural lens so that I can honor and center Indigenous ways of knowing, being, and doing. And by doing this, I connect the support that already exists to the support that will be in the future so that our communities can continue in the empowerment and the process that they are already in to pave a way for the future generations. As we see here in the fire picture and also my drumming, culture, community, and kinship are beautiful tools of medicine in the midst of deep hardship, trauma, and pain. And I hope that my research will not only pave the way for our communities, our Indigenous communities, but also other BIPOC communities, center culture and healing from dissociation.
Miigwech, Beth, thank you so much.
Thank you.
That was great. That is incredibly hard to be the first person, so thank you so much for that. And while the judges tally up, I just wanted to ask, you'd mentioned that, well, this is heavy stuff, and you'd mentioned in your notes that you also do beading and drumming and that. So do you find that as a way to kind of take you into a better place sometimes, or do you how do you use that? And do you prefer beading or do you prefer music? What do you do?
When it comes to like healing and everything, it just really depends on what my body needs at the time. And a part of like what I mean by resurgence and resistance is using those practices to help people reconnect with the parts of themselves. That's because that's how I have been engaging healing. So I guess my answer is like yes and no. It really just depends on what I need at the time. The beautiful thing about beading and drumming is that it's often done in community, and it's often done with the teachings that we have and the teachings that we hold, and we will continue on. So that's one of the reasons why those are much good medicines for my soul.
Thank you so much. And your talk has been a medicine for our soul. Thank you again, Beth.
Good. Thank you.
Next, we have Pratik Paldau in Environmental Life Sciences with The Mysterious Case of Cattails in North America.
Thank you, Michael.
Pratik.
Everyone here has likely driven across Ontario at one point or another, whether it be for a road trip, camping, or a weekend at the cottage. On your drive, you might have noticed some wetlands filled with cattails like what I have up here. Some of you might have passed by those same wetlands multiple times over the years. But have you noticed something changed with the cattails recently? Do they look a bit different? Maybe a bit taller? Maybe a bit denser? In North America, we have two species of cattails. We have the narrowleaf, introduced in the 1800s, and we have the broadleaf, native to North America. And when these two cattails meet, they tend to readily mate with each other, producing hybrids. Now, these hybrids, they're like super cattails. They're invasive, they grow fast, they spread like wildfire, and they're taking over most of our native wetlands, having replaced both of the parent species with these tall, dense hybrid stands that trap our native animals, leading to their death. In fact, most of those wetlands you drove across on your drive are now almost entirely hybrids. Usually, when hybrids are this successful, they tend to wipe both parent species out or combine them all into one species. But in North America, we have a mystery in our hand. Despite the hybrid's dominance, both parent species are still hanging on. The question is, why haven't they disappeared yet? If we can solve this mystery, we can help better explain how hybridization threatens biodiversity everywhere as it becomes more common due to climate change and humans. I try to get to the bottom of this mystery by looking specifically at flowering time in cattails. I specifically looked at narrowleaf cattails, suspecting it might be hiding from hybridization by flowering earlier than the other cattails. But after tracking their flowering time across multiple sites, I found the opposite to be true instead. They aren't avoiding each other, they're happily mingling with each other, suggesting flowering time is not the barrier protecting these parent species from hybridization like I had suspected. So our mystery still remains unsolved, and the key lies hidden somewhere in our wetlands. So the next time you're driving across Ontario, take a closer look at those hybrid-dominated wetlands. You might notice some of the parent species still hanging on. They might be blended in with the scenery, but they're also one of our biggest biological mystery. I was not able to solve this mystery, but I did rule out a major suspect who turned out to be innocent. If we can get to the root of this mystery, we can help potentially reestablish our native wetlands. But at the moment, the hybrids are still invading and our suspect remains free. Thank you.
That was amazing. Thank you so much. That was great. And now, I was a little surprised. This is wonderful, by the way. And I was a little surprised, though, because normally when people tell us facts about themselves or what they like to do, it's related to their research. But you said you had a monkey steal your breakfast once. And I'm thinking that's not anything to do with your field research, or was it with your field research?
So I was thinking about this, and I realized I was really fun. Because I lived for 12 years in Nepal. I was born there. And we have temples with and monasteries with a lot of monkeys wandering around. So when I was a kid, me and my brother, we always so a monkey would escape the mountains that come, the temple that come out. So one day I was eating like a boiled egg, let's say soft boiled egg, and I had my hand. And I was on the stairs, and I always want to grab my hand. And then I'm like, my brother's not here. No one's here right now. I look back, and I see a monkey staring at me like this. We both got scared. We ran away. The egg goes on the ground, splits apart. No one gets the egg, and we both were terrified and traumatized.
Okay, so it's a lot safer doing your field research than
I'd say so.
At least you get to eat more. So I'm glad for that. Thank you so much again for your wonderful presentation.
Thank you, everyone, for coming.
All right, next we have Dmitry Mishenko in applied modeling and quantitative messages with small businesses, small decisions, big economy. Dmitry.
Hi. So when a large company announces layoffs, it makes national news because the impact felt for entire city. When a small one lays off, nobody notices. Only a few dozen people impacted. And it's actually good news because 98% of all businesses in Canada are small. Our economy doesn't depend on a handful of large enterprises. It's supported by millions of small ones. So what makes a firm thrive? High-performing firms have one trait in common. They use data analytics to drive their everyday decisions. They don't just go with gut instinct. They look at evidence and they weigh the risks. You already do this. You look at traffic before you drive. You look at balance before you spend. That's data-driven decision-making. It's not complicated. But my research shows that most small businesses don't do it. Not because they lack data, because they fear imperfect records. They lack the skill. They don't measure. And I call this they stuck in what I call pre-analytics stage. Even simplest data practices beats guessing. Ask your clients how they found you. That's advertising return on investment. Track your error rates. That's operational priority list. Small signals, compounding effects. It works. I spent 15 years inside small and medium enterprises applying these principles. A study of 2.1 million small businesses in Europe shows that data-driven firms outperform. What they don't tell us is how a firm with no data culture, imperfect records, and no analytical budget get there. New hire? Training? Technology? Nobody tells. This is the gap my research addresses. I'm building a decision tree framework that helps small businesses decide where to invest first, based on their organizational structure, sector, and data capabilities. Because the barrier was never the data. It was not knowing which step to take first. When we help small businesses make better decisions, we don't just strengthen individual firms. We build an economy that is more innovative, more competitive, far less fragile. One that doesn't depend on a handful of giants. Thank you.
Thank you, Dimitri. That was great. Now, you've been part of the Trent community for a long time. I think 2011 is when you first...
Yeah, it's been a while. Yeah.
You started with ESL, and then you, oh my goodness, when came all the way up. And
What a long,
a long journey, right? So I just want to talk to you about that journey. And first of all, how did you get into this side of data analytics and small business? Well, what motivated you to kind of bring those two together?
Yeah, that's a good question. Well, I've had my own business that I built. Instead of focusing on sales, I focused on improving efficiencies through small decisions, and it compounded over time, and it has been a success. Then I moved on onto working for other companies, and it was all the same. Everyone focuses on big goals and overlooking all the small things that you can improve that individually make small impact, but because you can do a dozen of them in a month or a year, they compound. And it's very effective. And I have been applying this principle, as I said, and I've been doing really well. Yeah.
No, thank you, Dimitri. And I think it's a great principle for life, not only just for business. I think in many things in life, take care of the small things, don't overlook them, and then the business will take care of itself. So, Dimitri, thank you very much.
Yeah, thanks.
Next, we have Alyssa Stiegel in psychology with Let's Solve the Mystery, examining the self-medication hypothesis with individuals with ADHD. Alyssa.
Have you ever read a thriller and tried solving the mystery yourself? Now, you probably didn't think the mystery was solved after only finding the first clue. In every mystery, the first clue is often a fragment of a much larger story. Now, the same can be true about people with substance use disorders. What many people perceive to be about pleasure or merely a lack of self-control is often an indication of a much larger issue. Now, there's a theory that we call the self-medication hypothesis, which suggests that substance use disorder, or SUD, can develop in an attempt to reduce psychiatric distress. So what appears to start as a solution can rapidly turn into a problem, yet we know that only some go on to develop substance use disorders. Understanding who is at risk and why is critical for prevention and informing effective treatment interventions. Now, research investigating self-medication in the context of ADHD is limited, and several questions remain. We know that people with ADHD are more likely to have an SUD, but can this be explained by self-medication? If so, is this driven by symptoms of inattention or symptoms of hyperactivity, or both? These questions matter because when we don't understand the mechanisms that are driving substance use, we end up offering solutions that miss the reality of the problem. My research aims to answer these questions. Using longitudinal data from Canadian adults, I have started examining whether emotion-oriented coping explains the relationship between ADHD and SUD to test this theory. With further analysis, I hope to identify which ADHD profiles are vulnerable to specific types of SUDs. So far, preliminary results have provided support for self-medication in people with alcohol use disorder, such that people with high levels of inattention and high levels of hyperactivity are in fact using alcohol to alleviate their symptoms. Now, what's interesting about this is it appears to exist regardless of age and gender, meaning that this is not something we're seeing in one group of people. It's something we're seeing across the board. Substance use contributes to an average of 75,000 deaths each year, many of which are preventable with timely interventions that actually address these mechanisms that are sustaining substance use over time. Once we have a better understanding of these mechanisms, like self-medication, clinicians can address substance use at its source, contributing to a more effective treatment approach. But when substance use is treated like this standalone issue, treatment addresses the symptoms, not the root cause. Like treating the first clue in a mystery as the culprit, this then prevents us from solving the case. Once we have all the clues, we can piece together the complete story and solve the mystery. When we shift our attention to these underlying conditions that people are really just trying to cope with, we hope to not only help reduce the rate of drug use, but to make long-term recovery possible. Thank you.
Wow. You're not watching this, but there's 3 seconds left, and you landed that right on the aircraft carrier. So thank you so much. As you said, your preliminary research looks good. There's some really great findings. So I was going to ask, what's the next steps for you now? Where are you going to go now with that research and perhaps beyond?
Well, we want to see what this looks like in people with cannabis use disorder, tobacco use disorder, overall substance use, and illicit substance use, because we want to see if there's some differences there and see if we see the same results with gender and age.
That's amazing.
Yeah.
Wonderful. Put your hands together. Thank you so much,
You're welcome.
Alyssa. Our next speaker is Emiliana Swick in Environmental and Life Sciences with How Climate Change Will Affect Sportfish.
It's 30 degrees outside in July, and you're at the office with the air conditioning set at a nice, cool 20 degrees. But you're in a passive-aggressive battle with your coworker who won't stop turning the thermostat up to 25. You're probably wondering how this has anything to do with fish. Well, unlike us, fish are cold-blooded. While we keep our bodies at a constant temperature, sometimes with the help of air conditioning, fish body temperature changes with the environment around them. And because fish have access to a whole lake's worth of temperatures, from warm surface waters to cool deep waters, they get to pick their body temperature. But like us, fish have temperatures that they like. This differs between species, kind of like how you and your coworker like different temperatures. And we expect fish to live at the temperatures they like. Now, imagine your coworker turns off the air conditioning, or it breaks altogether. You've just lost your cool refuge to this uncomfortable July heat. Climate change projections are suggesting that water temperatures are going to increase, and fish species are going to respond to this change very differently. Species that prefer cool or cold water are going to start to lose those cooler areas of the lake, while species that prefer warm water might start to gain habitat. And if we know what temperatures these fish prefer and what they use, we'll have a better understanding of if these fish are at risk of losing habitat due to climate warming. So my research investigates the temperature preferences of 3 iconic Ontario sportfish species: walleye, muskie, and smallmouth bass. And if you're thinking, well, if this is so important, why hasn't anybody looked into this yet? There's actually been lots of research on fish temperature preference. And from this, we know that walleye prefer cool water, bass like warm water, and muskie like water temperatures somewhere in between. However, most of this research was done in a lab with fish in tanks. And while we assume that fish are going to live at their preferred temperature based on these lab studies, we don't really know what temperatures these fish actually use every day in a lake. So my study is a little bit different. We use acoustic telemetry, a method of animal tracking where we surgically implant tags about the size of a AA battery into fish, and these tags transmit data about the fish that can be picked up by underwater receivers placed throughout a lake. The lake that we track fish in is about 30 minutes outside of Peterborough, and the great thing about this tracking method is that the fish can go about their daily lives, and we can track both their movement around the lake and what temperatures they're living at. The findings of my study will allow us to determine the temperature needs of these 3 fish species on a day-to-day basis, to help us better understand how climate change will affect these sportfish. Because while your office can fix the air conditioning, once we lose the cooler areas of the lake, there's no repair to get them back. And if fish start to lose their habitat, we may start to lose the fish. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. That was so fascinating to watch. In the notes you provided us, it says that you're actually a sport fisher yourself, right?
yes.
And so this was super exciting, right? So the question I have for you is, what you started fishing before you started your research? Is that correct? You've been fishing for a long time, or did you do research first and then? Because the question I want to ask is like, did you see anything by fishing saying, geez, fish act this way, and then you were able to use your data later to kind of predict that, or?
I think it's a little bit of both. I think I fished a lot as a kid, and then I got a research job at a fish research station, and then as I started doing more research, then I found myself fishing more, and it just kind of happened together.
So the one informs the other, right?
Yeah,
and that's
yeah.
great. So now, do you think you can write the definitive fish manual now for people using your research and make some extra money on the side?
Maybe give me a couple of years.
Fair enough. Well, everybody put your hands together. Thank you so much.
Thank you.
And now it's Hadia Mustanasir from psychology in Can You Spot the Difference? How Stress Shapes Learning. Hadia. Yeah.
Okay. Okay. Take a look at these images. Can you spot the difference? There's a region in your brain that helps you learn and form memories called the hippocampus. And inside it, there's an even smaller structure called the dentate gyrus, or the spot the difference region of the brain that you all just used right now to perform this task. This region produces new adult-born neurons, or brain cells, that help us tell the difference between two very similar looking environments. I study this part of the brain, and I want to know what happens to it when under stress. So, I injected 10 groups of rodents with the stress hormone and the other 10 with saline to have a group to compare to. I then put them in two very identical looking boxes, and but to test their performance, in one box they got a 2-second mild shock, and in the other they got no shock. And then I measured their freezing behavior because just like me, rats freeze when they sense danger. I expected to find the group that got the stress hormone to freeze less because memory should be impaired. But that's not what happened. My rats did not freeze. In fact, the group that got their stress hormone, they learned to tell the difference better than the group that didn't. So I had to dive even deeper. I looked at the dentate gyrus, that same spot, the difference region of the brain that I was telling you about earlier. And under stress, we'd expect to find less of these new adult-born neurons or brain cells, showing that memory is impaired. But that's not what happened. So the groups, their neurons did not decrease, and that showed the memory is still intact. So I had to dive even deeper. I looked at the dentate gyrus' two regions, the top for memory formation and the bottom for emotion regulation. And here is where I found something interesting. The top region of the memory, their neurons did not decrease, so showing the memory is still intact. But the bottom emotion region showed that the stress group, their neurons or brain cells decreased, showing that stress may impair learning through emotions more than memory. So understanding this is important, not only in games like Spot the Difference, but in real life matters when making safe decisions. And the next time you probably have to make a safe decision like that, maybe ask yourself, am I using my emotions or my memory? And by the way, there's probably like 10 differences here. I hope you got them all. Thank you.
Wow, that was great. That was
Thank
good.
you. I'm shaking.
No, you're great. And what I was going to say is, I think you've been teaching us that a little bit of stress is a good thing. So I think, you rocked it because you know, the little bit of stress is a good thing. I also like how, the Trail College mascot's a happy box. And I like how there's a box there. But
I expected more kids to be here, but I spot one. So I hope she worked well.
I'm childlike, and I really appreciate it. I just wanted to say how great that was. But we asked you, what would you like to talk about in this moment? And you had a whole lot of list of things. But then you said, I wanted to have a message to offer my dad. So
Yeah.
Can I ask you what that might be?
Yeah, so, like my dad, oh, that's so funny. My dad passed away recently. And I just want to say, cherish the people that are there with you. Like, I know you all do probably, but I learned that, I just want to say I love him so much. He is the reason that I'm here today. He gave me all the food that I've ever ate. He gave me this outfit. He is the reason why I am today. And I just wanted to acknowledge him because I know he's looking at me. And I just love him so much. That's about it. Thank you.
I know he's watching you right now.
Yeah.
So wonderful job. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you.
Wow, this is such an emotional time, right? Not only the stress of this, but grad students, this is why I said this whole real world and, the university, people aren't in it. No, this is the real world. People have lives, people lose people meet people are with people. That is what life is all about, and we experience this on every level. And thank you so much for sharing with us tonight. So next we have Carolyn Stone from psychology with compassion fatigue, caring to capacity, or resource depletion. Carolyn.
Healthcare workers provide compassionate care every day, but many report feeling emotionally drained, detached, and struggling to empathize. a condition known as compassion fatigue. Awareness of this issue grew substantially during the COVID-19 pandemic when healthcare workers faced intense demands, increased personal risk, and limited external resources. But what about those internal resources? Think about the image behind me, a car dashboard. The RPMs are high, the speedometer's maxed out, but the fuel tank is empty and the temperature reads cold. Nothing's broken, but something is wrong. This is a useful way to think about compassion fatigue. Compassion's important. It strengthens communities, supports social bonds, and protects vulnerable people. Yet despite this importance, compassion fatigue is poorly understood. Traditionally, it's described as the cost of caring, the emotional toll of engaging with the suffering of others. In this view, it's mainly seen as an occupational risk for caregiving professionals. However, it was recently proposed that our ability to empathize may be affected by self-regulation and the expenditure of mental energy. My research starts with a simple assumption. Compassion requires effort. Think about a time when a friend complained about something. The first time, caring probably felt effortless, even automatic. The second time, maybe you are a really good friend and remain supportive. But the fifth time, they complain about the same thing. Caring suddenly feels effortful and requires more self-control. This drives my research question. Do compassion and self-control draw from the same pool of limited resources, the same fuel source? To test this, I have participants first complete a simple task that requires self-control, after which we measure the different types of effort they use. Later, we measure compassion. If compassion requires effortful self-control, then people who exert more in the first task should show less compassion later. And that's partly what we're finding. Different types of effort affect compassion differently. Some drain it, but effort to focus and pay attention may actually support compassion. This suggests that compassion fatigue is not just a professional concern. It's a human one. And just like this dashboard, compassion depends not just on fuel in the tank, but how all systems work together to to keep the engine running. By understanding compassion, we can help safeguard one of the most vital forces that binds us together before the engine fails. Thank you.
Wow, thank you so much. And
Yeah.
such a difficult subject to get into and to analyze and think about. And when you talk to us about, how you chill out and move back, you talk about your family and your kids and that.
Yeah.
And how is it to be a grad student? Because I think a lot of people are here, what? You have kids too and you're doing all this? And you talk about fatigue. How do you manage it all?
Well, I like to joke that I just do both poorly, but I do work really hard. I have a really supportive spouse who's here in the audience, and I really try and I try and keep in mind that this is a really good example to set for the kids, that learning never actually ends, that it's okay to put yourself out there and start kind of where people that are 20 years younger than me are at now. And, you have setbacks and everybody has reasons for why they return to school after time. And yeah, it's been a really great experience, a humbling experience, but a really great experience.
And what are the next steps for you? Are you thinking of even more studies, or is this going to be it for the little while?
Well, I often just try to make it to the finish line. So that's where my focus is right now. I'm replicating the study right now that I'm doing with a couple of changes. And I'll see. I know that whenever a semester ends, I think, oh, thank goodness I need a break. But it's only about a week or so before I'm like, okay, I need to get back at it. So who knows when I'm done, what I'll be doing.
Thank you so much. Let's put your hands together and thank you for
Thank you.
all your efforts on all fronts.
Thank you very much.
All right. Well, we're getting through. I think we're about that halfway mark. It's very exciting, and we're going to now have Min Dong in Environmental and Life Sciences with From Mining Sites to the Dining Table: The Role of Rare Earth Elements in a Sustainable Future. Min.
Rare earth elements are critical minerals essential for high-tech industry are now reaching out in a place through their use as fertilizers. However, up to date, there are no environmental guidelines for these elements associated with these elements, despite their significant impacts on mining and refining. The sustainable development of rare earths, therefore, requires a careful consideration of economics, environment, and social. These sectors are important for Canada, a major exporter of critical mineral worldwide. Economically, lanthanum, one of the most abundant rare earths, is often dismissed as a low-value byproduct. Yet, it proves to be a powerful fertilizer. Thus, evaluating the rare earth use in agriculture and assessing the health risks associated with it is the main objective of my research. I conducted an experiment at Trent University where I grew rice, an important staple food, in a simulated chamber and applied lanthanum with it. The finding shows that lanthanum accumulated the least in the rice grains, the parts we actually consume, compared to the leaves and stem. I then further calculated the risk for those lanthanum-emitted rice and also for over 100 food items that represents the daily diet of North Americans without any lanthanum amendments. The Hazard Index confirmed a limited risk exposure for rice, but for the total diet, we are already 40% in of the safe threshold. This is a call for caution because we are now potentially and increasingly being exposed to these elements just through our normal daily consumptions. From mining sites to the dining table, the question is no longer whether we can use rare earth elements, it is whether we can use them safely. My research shows that we can, with a shared responsibility, achieve this through assessing the risk and the incentive of awareness from industries to scientists and farmers to policymakers. The future now belongs to all of us. Thank you.
Wow, that's exciting. Wow, so good. Thank you, too. You sent us a lot of details about what you love, and what came out is how much Min loves chemistry. You're all about chemistry. Chemistry is your life, and I
Yes.
get that, right? It's great that you can do this in your research. And you said something that struck me interesting. You also like cooking. So that didn't surprise me either, because, chemistry, cooking is a bit of chemistry. But you said in the lab, you measure things to like parts per billion or
Yes.
trillion,
Yes.
and or million, and in the kitchen, not so much. So why are you not so accurate in the kitchen? You just you say you kind of eyeball it
Yes.
in the kitchen. So does that make it taste better, or tell me why?
So just to give everyone a context, so normally when we do like cooking, we do by grams or milligrams. But for like say rare earth elements, if I want to measure the concentrations, it's part per billions, or go down to part per trillions. So like whenever I'm in the labs, I'm like pipetting, but when I'm at home, I'm just scooping the whole thing, dumping it. So I find it's funny to see the contrast. Yeah, thank you.
So which one do you do? Which one's more relaxing?
Of course, cooking.
Okay, fair enough. Okay.
But I do enjoy my chemistry too.
Thank you so much. Everyone, put your hands together for
Thank
me.
you.
That's great. And now we have Kristen Jones in Canadian Studies with It's Time to Take RCAP Off the Shelf. Kristen.
Everything we ever needed to know about repairing Canada's relationship with Indigenous peoples can be found in the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples from 1996. It was 5 years of direct consultation with and by mostly Indigenous people. It was initiated by Prime Minister Brian Mulroney as a result of a response to many sites of conflict across the nation. One you may have heard of is the Oka crisis. At the same time, the Public Policy Forum was finding that Canadians were overwhelmingly in favor of justice for Indigenous people. And with that in mind, the understanding that the time was now for change, RCAP was mandated to find solutions to the problems that Indigenous people were facing as a result of Canada's broken promises. They went across the country, they spoke to 2,000 individuals, received 1,000 written submissions, and they conducted about 300 research projects as well. All this was consolidated into 450 recommendations and a small, tiny little 4,000 pages. The problem is that when the report was finished, the government who received it was not interested in it the way that the government who asked for it was. So thousands of Indigenous people across the nation who had put their hope in finally something happening to make things right had their hopes dashed again. I discovered RCAP during my undergrad for research. I've cited it hundreds of times. It's an absolute gold mine for research. The problem is that it was supposed to be a gold mine for policy and real change. Imagine the Canada we would have now if it had been implemented fully. Yeah. I would like to, using the few times that RCAP was implemented successfully, create a roadmap for how we can now implement it today. I would like to take one policy issue, the justice system, and study it and provide a roadmap of how we can implement it. And hopefully, I would be creating a roadmap for other people to find inspiration in policy areas that they're inspired by and do the same. And I think that would be really great.
That's wonderful. Thank you. You mentioned that you found this is the Royal Commission on Aboriginal Peoples early on. How did you come across it? Is it something a professor, or did you just doing research you found it? Or?
Yeah, on like the library website, I started searching. I was doing some paper, probably in my first year or second year, and there it was. And I didn't understand why I had never heard of it before.
This is pretty common for Royal Commissions, though. Is this in your experience that Royal Commissions get done, that if you don't want to do something, let's create a Royal Commission? Is that how?
Well, I mean, I think it was supposed to mean something, and I shared this with all my students this semester, and none of them had ever even heard of it.
Can you get this online now? Yeah, I see it's Library and Archives Canada. So this is all available online?
It's all online. It's a lot. There's a lot.
And what time period was it originally published in?
1996.
1996. Wow. Great. Well, thank you so much.
Thank you.
Put your hands together for this great research. Okay, now it's time for Justine Alvarado in psychology with Beyond the Mirror, exploring social media, body image, and self-identity in young adults. Justine.
When I look at myself in the mirror, do I even know who's staring back at me? Some days I wonder why I don't always see who I want to be. Do I dare ask, mirror, mirror on the wall? But when I hear the response, it's not the mirror, it's me. Sometimes I hear good things, sometimes bad. Now, most of us have experienced this at some point in our lives, especially during a critical period known as emerging adulthood. This stage, roughly between the late teens to mid-20s, is when we are no longer adolescents but not quite settled into adult roles. It's a time of exploration, uncertainty, and major life decisions about education, careers, relationships, and our identity. One of the most foundational developmental tasks during this stage is forming a coherent sense of self, understanding who you are and what matters to you beyond what you see on the surface. Now imagine this. It's a Friday night and you're scrolling through social media before bed. You see friends, celebrities, even strangers. Hundreds of carefully curated images of faces, bodies, and lifestyles. Now you don't consciously decide to compare yourself, but you do. And suddenly social media becomes another mirror. But unlike a real mirror, it doesn't just reflect, it reshapes and redefines using hundreds of voices, filters, blur imperfections, likes and comments, praise or condemn certain appearances, quietly suggesting what's valued and what isn't. We already know from past research that social media can influence body image, often in a negative light. Studies have also linked body image and self-identity as it deeply influences self-esteem and perceived worth. My research will focus on how body image experiences in social media shape the way young adults view their sense of self. To explore this, we will be using a mixed methods approach, combining questionnaires with semi-structured interviews to capture both general patterns and personal experiences. Because for individuals whose identities are extremely influenced, reflections on social media can carry a heavy weight. It becomes a space where identity is constantly challenged, evaluated, and compared. Research shows that a clear sense of self supports mental health, meaningful relationships, and confident decision-making. And when identity is uncertain or fragile, young people become vulnerable to anxiety, self-doubt, and distress. So when young adults develop a clear sense of self beyond the mirror, both real and digital, the reflection no longer speaks louder than the person standing before it. Because the real challenge is learning which voice to trust. In a world filled with curated reflections telling young people who they should be, perhaps the real work is helping them strengthen their own. When this happens, the mirror no longer shapes identity. It begins to reflect it.
That's great. Another one right on the button. That's so wonderful and so powerful.
Thank you.
You did great. Don't take deep breath. Deep breath. That's good. I think one of the questions I have is you're just about to start with your research now.
Yes.
How are you going to do the sample? How big will the sample be, and how will you get people? Has your experience been that people want to talk? Maybe they do want to talk about themselves in these surveys, or do you think it'll be difficult to find people who will want to be in part of a survey like this?
Well, you know what? I'm still very in my preliminary stages. We haven't really started anything yet, but I do hope, because it is a pretty sensitive topic. Our goal is just to really encourage that. Our participants explaining sharing their stories and their experiences, just because it is a really sensitive topic.
Right, and it'll be the survey, because we think of data and that it's not going to be kind of clinical, that it will be more like share your story, talk to us type of thing.
Yeah, absolutely.
Oh, that's wonderful. Well, we wish you the best with it all.
Thank you so
Put your
much.
hands together. Thank you so much again.
Yeah.
And now it's Nebavita Malik in applied modeling and quantitative methods with broken trust, broken payment. Can we survive? Nebavita.
Good evening, everyone. Imagine it's 2018 and your bank BMO called you and said that their payment system has been breached and all of your personal information has been leaked. So it sounds serious, but nothing happened immediately. But after a couple of years, we forget about it. Fast forward to 2020, you try to get your COVID-19 emergency balance, which was provided by the Canadian government, using your CRA account, but you cannot log in because you found your password has been not working. So you call them and they say, shockingly, your benefit is already claimed by someone else. So what happened is someone else accessed your CRA account and then changed their banking information into their banking information and took all of your money. So how did this happen? The hackers used previously stolen information from BMO, things like BMO or other things, and used your personal information like name, email address, even social insurance number, and hacked into thousands of CRA accounts and took over all of the 2020 benefits Canada government gave to others. So I am studying the financial impact of cybersecurity. Whenever the trust is broken, let's say your trust is broken with BMO, would you still continue your banking with them, or you change your bank system to another company like TD or Scotia? So my first question would be, when the company gets cyber breached, if the customers still continue to stay with the company and keep on paying, or they switches the company, then I study if this thing is happening with the industry at the same rate or a different rate, And then I try to understand what happens to the company itself if the customers are going to another company. How do they survive the financial crisis? So whenever this vulnerability time happens to the company, they started cutting the jobs, they started increasing their product price, and it eventually affects all of our lives. So I am studying this financial impact of cyber attacks, and I would suggest all of you to stay vigilant and eventually change your passwords. Thank you.
Thanks, Nivedita. That's very good advice. I appreciate that. Now, when you finish your studies at Trent, do you think you're going to continue in cybersecurity, and what do you think your path might be?
When I started the study, the research, I find it interesting, but I had a background of working in supply chain industry. I'm more into that.
Oh, okay. So that's where you want to be going.
Yes.
Yeah, that's great.
Yeah.
And it says that your time here, Niagara Falls is your favorite space in Canada, or
Well-
not your favorite?
Well,
Because I
the
have thoughts, but I want to hear from you.
Well, I landed here in Canada. I landed here in 31st of December, and the next day in the morning, I woke up and went to Niagara Falls. So,
As one does, yeah.
Many of our friends still haven't been there, so it becomes my #1 priority. So that's the fun thing.
That's great. Oh. Well, thank you so much again for sharing this with us today. Thank you.
Thank you. Yep.
Okay. Now we have Benjamin Darkwa in Interdisciplinary Aging Studies, The Meaning of Home, exploring the experience of older adults aging in place in gentrifying neighborhoods in Ontario, Canada. Benjamin.
My research is very simple, but asks an important question. What happens to older adults who want to age in place whilst neighborhoods are changing around them? Let's look at these two beautiful pictures. Picture A was a picture that was taken in 2009. A beautiful picture that every older adult could like to age in place over there. Picture B was a picture that was taken in 2022. And you know one thing? That was the same place. You realize that neighborhood has really changed. Gentrification has really occurred over here. I know you are thinking about so many questions, but don't worry. In the next few minutes, just listen to my presentation. Here in Ontario, rising housing costs and neighborhood change has been reshaping life every day. New development are appearing, familiar places are disappearing, and long-lasting social relationships began to change. But to many older adults, home is more than a place to live. It represents identity, stability, and belongings. I want to explore how older adults experience age in place in gentrified neighborhood here in Ontario, with a specific focus on what home means to them as these changes occur. And rather than treating age in place as the only rising housing issue, my research will focus on the life experience of the older adults, how they navigate this change, how they make sense of belongings, and how they make meaning of the community that is transforming around them day in, day out. This research is very important because currently Canada's aging population is growing rapidly. Statistics Canada made us know that the older adult population rise from 13% in 2001 to 19% in 2021. And in 2021, that was the first time the older adult population surpasses the children, that's age 0 to 14. And that was mind-blowing. Yet, policies are still encouraging age in place without fully considering how these community change may affect older adults' social or emotional well-being. By highlighting the meaning of home from the older adult perspective, it's my goal to produce research that will help create age-friendly strategy that will genuinely help older adults in their real life. Because age in place shouldn't be remaining at home whilst losing its meaning itself. Thank you.
Thank you, Benjamin. I was starting to worry, but I just started to listen to you, and all of my worries went away. So I appreciate your attitude. It's great. so wonderful. You know, before I came to Trent, I had never heard of aging studies, and I realized that Trent is a hotbed of aging studies. I wanted to ask you, how did you get into aging studies? Where did you first, were you in a neighborhood that you saw a change, or what for you was the catalyst that got you thinking about these issues?
Yeah, so I'm someone that I've stayed with my grandparents for almost like 20 years now. And when I was at age 6, I was staying with my grandparents, and I realized that the whole community was like a forest. We were living in a rural community. And about 10 years later, I realized that the neighborhood has really changed. People are moving in, people are moving out. And my grandmother asked one question: why is it that certain neighborhood has really changed? And almost everyone that he knows has moved out, and new people are moving in. And that's created the question of, then what is home whilst these neighborhoods are changing? Yeah, so as someone, I did geography in my undergraduate, but I specialize in health geography. So through health geography, then I noticed of aging studies. So after school, I was like, no, let me continue. Because my undergraduates, I did study on the influence of place on healthcare seeking behavior among the older adults. Yeah, so from that, then I was like, no, let me further up to do aging studies. So I learned that here in Trent University, reading MA Interdisciplinary Aging Studies program.
That's wonderful. Thank you so much. I love hearing these stories because, Benjamin, you know, this idea of how you're inspired to go on to these studies, you know, and this is the great thing about education, too. You can start in one field, and your eyes are open to different pathways. So, Benjamin, thank you so much for being here.
Thank you. Thank you, everyone.
Next, we have Chen Zi in psychology with Making Your Learning Efforts Visible. Chen.
Recently, I just learned how to swim freestyle, and I completely addicted to it. The reason is simple. I can see my improvement. My fitness app gives me a report every time I swim. 1 month before, I couldn't even swim 50 meters without stopping. 1 month later, I reached 2 kilometers. So every time I check my swimming report, I feel a strong sense of fulfillment. And there's only one thing can stop me from jumping into the pool: forgetting my smartwatch. If I cannot see my report, I cannot see my efforts. I do need these visible numbers to prove my progress, even only to myself, not others. So I was impressed by the power of seeing, and I'm curious to see whether this visibility could also work on our learning process. So, my research is about making your effort visible to enhance your learning engagement. In our modern life, we rely highly on the internet and computers to study and work. Just like your smartwatch catches your physical movement, your logins, your clicks, and the time you spend on each page can all be recorded. And our learning management system captures all of this. However, most of our instructors and students never look at this data because our education system focuses more on the learning results. Your exam scores, your final papers, while ignoring our learning process, your attention to the lectures, your discussion with your peers. If you are taking an online course, this digital footprint can actually draw a full picture of your everyday learning. And I'm the one who joined the learning picture. So my research aimed to develop an e-learning engagement model using the data from your real, everyday online learning behavior, and then visualizing and interpreting this data in a way that both learners and educators could read easily, just like my swimming report. And I believe if you can see your daily engagement, your improvement just right there on our learning management system, you will be encouraged to stay engaged. And your professor could get timely evidence to adjust teaching strategies. Finally, our university would be happy to see an increased retention rate and academic performance. That is the power of visibility. Please remember, every effort matters, every step counts. Thank you.
Well, thank you so much. And great visuals, by the way. You know, when we asked what other things do you do outside of your research, of course you said swimming. So I can see that, you know, you're living your work, of course. But I also know you because you're a pretty crafty person as well. And talk about visualization. I know you do incredible flowers and things with pipe,
yes,
pipe
you
cleaners.
remember?
I do remember that, and for continuing ed, right? And then so
Yes.
so tell us about that. You know, you clearly are a visual person. What is it about making miniature things with pipe cleaners? That do you see that as representing something bigger? Well, why do you love that so much?
So, you know, when we do our research, we know we use a lot of about our brain energies. But if we do our crafting, just some repetitive activities, and it can help us to clean our mind and to help us to focus on the current. I really love that moment that can really focus on the moment and clean my mind. So it can also, you know, foster our engagement.
Yeah, no, I love it. The psychology of repetition and little things, and you make beautiful things. I iron for my repetition, but then I burn my shirts. But oh my gosh, that is and so you're so much more productive in every part of your life. So it's pretty amazing. So put your hands together for Trent.
Thank you.
Well, folks, we're in the home stretch, but we still have a lot of great competitors in the wings. And it is my honor now to invite Brendan Campisi up from History with Better Christians, Better Canadians, and Better People, the United Church of Canada and Indigenous Integration. Brendan.
In the late 1950s, on the God's Lake Reserve in northern Manitoba, a group of young people came together to form a club, which they named after the Cree word for partnership. This club organized educational talks and recreational activities like skiing and tobogganing. Now, that might not sound very special, but what was important about this group was the way it included both Catholics and members of the United Church, as well as First Nations, Métis, and white people in what had been a profoundly divided community. The goal of this club was to make its members better Christians, better Canadians, and better people. And for the United Church minister who recorded this, it was an example of the changes that were taking place for Indigenous people in Canada under the umbrella of integration. Now, integration could mean many different things. Sometimes it was just a euphemism for assimilation. It could refer to major policy changes, like status Indians being given the right to vote, or Indigenous children entering public schools. It could also refer to social changes, like migration from reserves to urban areas. For the United Church, it also had a spiritual dimension of bringing people together with one another and together with God. Now, that sounds very abstract, but usually what it meant was more like the kind of mundane activity that I mentioned earlier. The United Church encouraged its members to take part in integration, and that could look like many different things. It could mean visiting a congregation on a reserve, or young people going there to volunteer. It could mean helping to start friendship centers in towns and cities as people moved from reserves to those areas. It could mean taking in young First Nations people who were attending school away from home. And what brought many of these activities together was a set of shared assumptions within the church that although Indigenous people were starting to become full members of Canadian society, they still needed to go through a long period of preparation in which they would need help and guidance from well-meaning settlers. Now, by the end of the 1960s, that assumption was being challenged very dramatically because Indigenous people were increasingly asserting themselves in the public sphere and rejecting the need for help or guidance or integration. And for some people within the United Church, this was understandable. They were able to take these changes on board. But for those at the top, as I think you can see here, this came as a profound surprise. And what I think was especially challenging for those people was less the criticism of any specific measure or policy, and more the challenge to their sense that they knew what Indigenous people wanted, and that what Indigenous people wanted was the same thing that they wanted. And that's what I think is important about this history today, because that's an assumption that Canadians have made again and again throughout our history in our relationships with Indigenous people, and it's almost always steered us in the wrong direction. Thank you.
Wow, great work, Brendan. Thank you so much. I was reading through because this is a lot. Have you read the text? It is very fascinating, and the term, the last sentence here, about for the past we need forgiveness and reconciliation. In 1970, they are saying. Can you comment a bit more about this? Is this a proto movement of reconciliation, or is this just one of another forgotten type of movements in
I think there are connections to, reconciliation in the way that people talk about it today. And especially, I think it's very striking that, some of the, critiques of reconciliation that have come from indigenous thinkers point out that it is a Christian concept, right? That reconciliation is really fundamental to Christian theology. There's this idea of the reconciliation between, sinful humanity and God. And there are arguments that, in fact, the contemporary Canadian conception of reconciliation is in some ways like a secularized version of that. So I think it is very, very, I think it's a challenge to that contemporary discussion as well, that people were using similar language. It's actually a different source that I've come across that also uses the word reconciliation, and I don't know if I'm going to be able to fit it into my thesis or not exactly. And this maybe it'll end up in the conclusion or something, this sort of thread to the present.
A long footnote somewhere.
Exactly.
That's what we historians do. There's so much gold, and we're like, that's going in a footnote. That's got to go into. Read the footnotes, by the way. Those don't cut them off. They're the important things. Brendan, this is so great, and I appreciate this is a great historical lesson. But we're both historians, and on your sheet here, you said one of your favorite things is to hang out in used bookstores. Yeah. I love it. So it's kind of like going to Winners. Whenever I see somebody who's hangs out in a bookstore, I'm like Winners, like, what did you buy? How much did you actually pay for that? So what was your best book buy at a used bookstore?
Goodness. Where did I even find this? I have a copy of Lenin's What Is to Be Done that was printed in 1932. I think it's my oldest personal possession. And I think I found that in a used bookstore in Chatham or something, some small Ontario city. And I think that's probably my best one.
So if you want early kind of works by Lenin, by Marx, by, communist works, Chatham is your place?
Apparently.
All right, you heard it here first, hot tip. So, okay, let's put your hands together for Brendan. Kadja Hack in Sustainability Studies is up next with Bearing the Burden, BIPOC Lives at the Front Lines of Environmental Injustice. Kadja.
Every community deserves access to a clean and healthy environment. Clean air, safe water, green spaces, these are basic rights. But you might be surprised to learn that they are not shared equally. In the words of environmental activist Jim Tarter, some of us live more downstream than others. Environmental harm is not random. It is the least politically powerful and most marginalized communities who bear the burden. And in most cases, these are Black, Indigenous, and other people of color referred to as BIPOC and low-income populations who experience environmental harm to far greater levels than more privileged groups. These inequalities lie at the heart of my research on environmental injustice, which asks the question of who gets to live in these clean and healthy environments and who does not. When you imagine environmental injustice, you might think of large polluted cities, maybe industrial landscapes. What if I told you it can also exist in areas that appear clean and healthy, like Peterborough, Ontario? Through interviews with BIPOC residents, I explore how racialized communities experience environmental injustice in their everyday lives. My findings center on the 3 dimensions of environmental justice: distributional, procedural, restorative. Distributional justice is about the fair allocation of environmental harms and benefits. My participants worried about pollution exposure from former industrial sites concentrated in low-income areas and the impact of power outages, while viewing more affluent, often white neighborhoods recovering much quicker. Some spoke on how contamination has severed and disrupted their relationship to local land and waterways. Procedural justice is about fair decision-making. Who gets a seat at the table? And when you have a seat, do you have power? Participants describe processes in Peterborough to be formally open but exclusionary in practice. Indigenous and racialized voices are missing, and consultation is feeling tokenistic. Then restorative justice is about repairing the harms. My participants emphasize environmental injustice is rooted in colonization and capitalism. Any meaningful restoration must address these systems by demanding accountability and redistributing power. At its core, my research shows that the racialized experience of environmental injustice in Peterborough is about harm. It's about power and accountability. And if we truly want to have this clean and healthy environment, it must mean justice for everyone who calls it home. It must mean that no community is left living downstream. Thank you.
Wow. That is powerful. Thank you.
No worries. My name is Khadija.
Khadija.
There you go.
Thank you, Khadija. That is
No worries.
so great.
Or Cad. Cad's fine.
I think for a lot of people here, they'd be surprised to hear about the level of environmental injustice here, Khadija. So is there one story, one kind of instance that really, when you did your research, really you thought, wow, this is a powerful story? Or were there many? Is there one you can articulate to us that really kind of brings it home?
Totally. Interesting that you say powerful story in the lack of power that communities actually face and experience in the city, not having a voice in decision-making, Indigenous, Black, and people of color, not having a voice in what's actually being done. So the lack of tree canopy, Where are the trees actually located in the city? Is everyone having access to, protection from extreme weather events? Is everyone having adequate support? Thinking about, where are people going to cool down, right? Other things, I don't know, even where we did a food insecurity project, a side note, and our masters, who actually has access to affordable, healthy food options in the city, in the campus, whatnot. These are all issues related to and of environmental injustice that oftentimes are going not talked about. No one's having these conversations, or very limited spaces are having these conversations. There's no funding going into it. Yeah.
No, it's great. And I think thank you so much for opening our eyes to this and keep doing this research. It's great. Thanks,
Cool,
Khadija.
thanks. Okay.
All right, we're in the home stretch now with 3 more participants in this great competition. So without further ado, I'd like to introduce Jacob Bowman to you in Environmental Life Sciences with Behavioral Thermal Regulation and Thermal Exposure in Wild Brook Trout. Jacob.
Let me paint you a picture. You're walking down a hot, sandy beach on a summer day. The sand is so warm that it hurts your feet to walk, but you're able to keep going because when you step in the water for a moment, it cools down your feet so you can keep going on the sand. This property, called thermal inertia, exists because there is a lag between when your cool feet hit the hot sand and when they warm up. This property might be really important for helping fish survive climate change, believe it or not. My research focuses on a beautiful fish species called the brook trout, found in Algonquin Provincial Park. It's a cold water fish, which means that it can only survive in water bodies that remain cold year-round, such as deep lakes. If you're a brook trout, the trouble with living in a deep lake is that most of your food is found on the surface of the lake, like minnows and insects. That same area of the lake in the summer becomes really warm, which means that brook trout have trouble accessing this area of the lake. This is shown in a comparison between the summer and fall positions of a brook trout in the lake. So how do brook trout access this area of the lake if they can't warm up to warm temperatures? Brook trout can make short duration forays into these habitats, using their thermal inertia to access these shallow habitats in search of food. The graph on your right shows the positions of brook trout in terms of depth throughout the course of one day. This is one fish. And The points in the background of the graph are color-coded to temperature. You will notice that there are many points on the graph that are blue-colored or cold positions, representing a brook trout that is in the shallow water habitat, but is still at a cold temperature. This is really interesting because it shows that brook trout are able to access the shallow habitats while remaining cool. Climate change is causing unprecedented effects on our aquatic ecosystems, but this story shows how some fish species are able to use hidden strategies to cope with the effects of climate change. Thank you very much for listening.
Thank you very much, Jacob. That was great. In the notes that you gave us, you talked about being an aquatic photographer too. So I just wanted to ask, is that your work up there on there?
That is, yep. That's a brook trout I took a photo of in the Crow River in Algonquin Park.
Did you start aquatic photography first and then you got into research, or is it something that went hand in hand?
Sort of hand in hand, yes. Being involved in research is a great way to get out in the field and encounter really cool fish, so it presents really great opportunities.
And what I really love is how you have one foot firmly in the arts and one foot in the sciences. You have the aesthetics and the photography down, but you also have the science. So
that's true.
You're the full package, so let's put your hands together. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Thanks again, Jacob. Now we have Irene Badel Garcia in Environmental and Life Sciences with Does Epigenetic Age Survive Death? Evaluating DNA methylation post-mortem. Irene.
I'd like to begin by taking you on the left side of the slide and asking you, how do we know the age of a complete stranger? We can have visual cues such as, are they a child? Have they gone through puberty? Do we see wrinkles or gray hairs? We can even go further and take an x-ray, for example, and see if they're a kid, if they still have any teeth inside the skull, then that indicates that they have not yet gone through puberty. Or we can see signs of osteoporosis indicating that they are in an older age range. How do we know how many candles were on their last birthday cake? This is really difficult. So a few years ago, a new method was proposed, and that is DNA methylation. This is a method that it doesn't rely on the subjective idea of a person's age, but it's something molecular that we can do in the lab with higher accuracy. And so if we think of DNA methylation, it's just a little group called methyl that can be attached or removed to our DNA. And our cells use this to regulate the genes. The cells are adding the methyl group on the DNA to block any other genes they don't need, and they are removing it to reactivate them again. And so interestingly, it has been seen that the levels of these methylation throughout our whole genome change throughout our lifetime. So this we can use to estimate a person's age. And there are tools out there that have been developed called epigenetic clocks. These are clocks that just input this methylation information and output a prediction of how old that individual is. So if I now may take you to the right side of my slide, this is where my research focuses. Is this still true post-mortem? What happens after death? All the indicators that we can see during life are still there after death, but they don't last as long as the decomposition process begins. So we need more reliable tools. Now, what I did for this is I went to Quebec, where there's the only body farm in Canada, and they have human remains there decomposing naturally. So I took soft tissue samples from 15 of these donors and analyzed the DNA methylation at different time points during a period of 3 years. And so what I saw is I used all these epigenetic clocks that were developed by and for living individuals, and I applied them to cadavers. And I found that although they all underestimate the age predictions, they still maintain these patterns that can help us predict the age. But you may ask yourself, why do we care about a person's age? Why is this important? Well, the most obvious answer is that if we have a criminal case and we have an unidentified victim or an unknown criminal, just getting that extra information about their age can help us get closer to their identification. But also, if we see age as just a calculation of how much time has passed, we can use methylation to estimate to enter one of the biggest questions in forensics today, which is the time since death. Thank you so much.
Oh my goodness, that was right on the button. That was an amazing talk as well. Thank you so much.
Thank you. Sorry,
I know.
it's like, oh no.
It doesn't get any closer than that.
No.
So I guess, well, while the judges are writing up, my question is, this is heavy stuff. And you talk about your undergraduate work here where you looked at cadavers in Poland who, you know, victims of in the Second World War and that. This is very heavy stuff. Where do you want to go? Clearly you can take heavy stuff and we need people who do this. Where do you want to go with this type of research? And how do you think you can better employ this as you move forward from Trent?
Yeah, I would actually love, if I could choose my dream job, I would love to work for Interpol in one of their disaster victim identification units where they go to disaster areas where there's been a natural disaster or a big accident or terrorist attack, and they help in the efforts of identifying the victims. I think that would be the most fulfilling job I could ever have.
Well, and I think that's wonderful because you're going to take somebody's worst moment and try to bring some sort of closure and kindness around that. So that's wonderful.
Yeah.
Thank you so much.
Thank
Put your
you.
hands together for Ariana.
Thank you, Michael.
Well, folks, we're now to the final presentation. It has been an incredible evening so far. So without any further ado, I'd like to introduce Dan Zavara from Sustainability Studies with Africa's Sisyphean curse. That's the last time I'll say it. That's you told me I wanted to say it once. So Africans Sisyphean curse.
Okay. Imagine waiting all week for that epic Game of Thrones showdown. The Battle of the Bastards. Jon Snow, Ramsay Bolton. Then, just as complete darkness and silence. Power cut. No warning, no explanation, no idea when it will be restored. See, I grew up in Zimbabwe, south end of sub-Saharan Africa. And by the time I was 15, what I just described was pretty much Monday. So I wondered, what was it about Africa that literally made it a dark continent? After most were begrudgingly granted independence between the 1960s and 1980s, Africa tried to develop, okay? Mostly by imposing tariffs. No, I refuse to talk about Donald Trump. However, this didn't last because the IMF and World Bank had different ideas. They created a chaotic system that keeps Africa chained to debt, all while imposing export-based policies which do nothing for development. So Africa kind of feels like Sisyphus, condemned by the nasty Greek gods to a lifetime of pushing a huge boulder up a hill, which just rolls down anyway. So poor Sisyphus forever goes again via raw lithium exports, then again via coffee bean exports. And enough, Nikki Sibawi, this doesn't work. My research dissects quantitative data to isolate what we need to develop. Is it access to credit, better technology, a skilled labor force? Then I'll interview Zimbabwean politicians to understand country-specific barriers to development. I anticipate that the data will highlight key inconveniences, such as the rude power cuts, while I expect my local politicians to do what they do best and lie shamelessly. But to cross the bridge of development, I believe asking the right questions is more important than debating the right answers. What if the issue is not so much policy, but the system within which we operate? What if, to go forwards, Africa must essentially go backwards by embracing pre-colonial economic structures, thus redefining our very understanding of development? I conclude that Africa has been asking the wrong questions, which is why the uphill struggle persists. So, if I get this right, which I will, perhaps I can turn on just one light. So Zimbabwe, Africa, sees a way out of the darkness, assumes leadership on its own terms, and finally breaks its Sisyphean curse. Thank you.
Wow. Thank you for doing that with such humor and grace, and it was beautiful. You told me not to talk about Sisyphus, so I won't talk about Sisyphus. I will, and you said don't ask me any questions about the research, but I am. When you talked about interviewing politicians and worried about them lying, do you have some sort of tricks, some sort of ways to figure out how to deal with data that could be corrupted at source?
I am relying on my betters, my supervisors, and all those experience to give me some tips. Because I don't know, some of you who know me know that I don't mince my words. So I'm sure I'll get a lot of friction from that, but I'll find some ways.
And knowing that you don't mince your words, then I am going to ask you the big question: Liverpool, why?
You know what? I was told that this would be the hardest year of my life, and you know what? I believed it. But then compared to grad school, I haven't suffered. Liverpool, the torture that I've endured at the hands of Liverpool the entire season has been a nightmare. I mean, Manchester United, they're on top of us in the league. This is unbelievable. Like, I can't sleep. I can't sleep.
I'm sorry. I didn't want to get you more riled up, but
Thanks for that.
Well, we could talk about Liverpool Football Club all night long, but we won't. But we will say thank you so much again.
Thank you.
And there you have it, folks. That is the competitors for 3MT 2026. Let's put your hands together. We have the audience back. We have our judges back. Let's put your hands together for Leslie, JJ, and David, our incredible judging staff. It was no easy feat. And let's put your hands together for yourselves for choosing the audience choice. That was not an easy feat as well. And finally, let's put our hands together for our contestants who did an amazing job. All right, so here's the moment you've all been waiting for, the awards. So for the third place, the Trent Graduate Student Association, the TGSA third place prize, I'd like to ask Jasmine Rain, the president, to come up and give that award. Jasmine.
Thank you. I am so honored and so pleased to be pronouncing this award to one of my peers on behalf of the Trent Graduate Student Association, to Hajia Mustansir. Sure, we could do that. Oh, sorry. Great job. Thank you. I want to go off now. You can go off.
Thank you so much. Thank you so much. That's great. And now it is my honor as Principal Catherine Parr Trail College to present the second place prize, the Catherine Parr Trail College Prize. I don't even know who it is. We open it up. Ta-da. Liverpool is a pretty good football club, and Dansvara is a pretty great second prize winner. And now, here's the big one, the one that you chose. This is the audience favorite, and I am going to invite up Chat Hediachichi from the Office of Research and Innovation. This is the Office of Research and Innovation Audience Choice Award. Chat, I'm going to give you the award right here. There you are. And you didn't go far, did you? So come on back up. There's a lot of love in this room. Thank you very much. That's great. All right, folks. So we have 3 awards down. And now the award that is the big one, I'd like to call upon Professor Craig Brunetti, the Dean of Graduate Studies for the School of Graduate Studies Grand Prize. Professor Brunetti.
Thank you. Before I give out the award, I'd like to just thank Michael Eamon for hosting tonight's event. He always does an amazing job, so thank you. And once again, I'd like to extend my congratulations to all of our participants. Doing something in 3 minutes is incredibly hard. I would rather give a 40-minute talk than a 3-minute presentation. I'm probably going over 3 minutes just in my remarks today. But it's my pleasure to announce the winner of the 3MT competition for 2026. And the winner is Justine Alvarado.
Well, there you have it. Another 3MT is just about to come to a close. Again, many thanks for all of you for being here today. I just want to say a few other quick thank yous because this couldn't be done without a cast of thousands, so much support. I want to thank the Market Hall Performing Arts Center. I'd like to thank the Cheese Shop. If you liked your food, go check out the Cheese Shop. They know about snacks. So, thank you to the people at the Cheese Shop. Our videographer, Michael Hercombe, who's also chair of the board here at Market Hall. You like the place so much, you run it. So thank you so much for being our videographer. Mike, let's hear it. Hands together, Michael Hercombe. Let's hear it for our 3MT team from Academic Skills. We have Dr. Sue Beckwith, who doesn't want to come on stage, but this would not happen without Dr. Beckwith. We have Samiko Palaco. Yay, Samiko. Yeah. We have Natalie Nelson. Yay, Natalie. Susan Thompson. And Kate McLeod. Thank you so much. I am truly blessed to be at Trail College with so many wonderful students and employees and staff and faculty and great student interns. So thank you to Tula Pappas and Alexandra Boyd for all your work tonight. Thank you, guys. From the School of Graduate Studies, Aaron Davidson, who's a stalwart friend and a worker. Thank you so much for all you do for this. Thank you, Aaron. And our photographer, Melissa Driscoll from Communications. Thank you so much, Melissa, for doing what you do. And a big thank you to all of you. This is so important to have this moment where the university meets with the community. In 1964, this university was created because the community wanted a place where people could learn, where their families could stay and grow in a great community. And I want to thank you for being here, and thank you for letting us continue this tradition. And we hope to see you all for 3MT 2017, the 12th edition, next year. Thanks again, guys.